Creating blockbuster games like Uncharted 4 and Ratchet and Clank, known by most as AAA titles, has become labour-intensive and extremely expensive. But the world of gaming is beginning to rely on a new style of game, one that takes the creation away from developers and hands it over to science. That style is procedural generation, a system that generates new gameplay content based on some rather complex algorithms. Thanks to this system, though, games can become larger and more varied without the need for huge budgets and massive development teams. And this new style of development has been inspired largely by one game in particular, Minecraft. The game fast became the poster child for the genre after finding blockbuster success for its simplicity and reliance on procedural generation. But it's not an entirely new concept. Space trading game Elite, which has since been followed by Elite Dangerous, hit the scene back in the 1980s. Due to the limited 8-bit capabilities of computers at the time, Elite relied on procedural generation to create its vast worlds. And its successor, Elite Dangerous, now invites players to explore an ever-expanding, persistent universe using the same technique.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills.
While 150,000 of the game's star systems are based on real-world astronomical records, the remainder are created according to scientific models and principles. And the success of the game has encouraged a new wave of developers to follow suit. The most high-profile of which comes from developers Hello Games and No Man's Sky.
I've seen things. A few things before. Left the sun and moon behind. Galaxies waiting to be found.
At the center of No Man's Sky is a virtual universe, which the player can explore any way they want. This space exploration game uses procedural generation to create a variety of flora and fauna within a planet's ecosystem. And they've taken the concept one step further by producing an entire universe which is populated by no less than 18 quintillion planets. Due to the sheer size of No Man's Sky, Hello Games estimates that around 99.9% of the planets will never be explored by players. Although that hasn't stopped the developers from making them. This new style of game design proves that small studios across the world are now capable of achieving more than they ever could before and on a much smaller budget. Procedural generation hasn't just been embraced by the space genre, though. The Binding of Isaac from developer Nicholas is an 8-bit fantasy adventure game that uses generative software to create its dungeon set levels. Fashioned after the Nintendo classic The Legend of Zelda, The Binding of Isaac is part of the roguelike genre. Roguelike games are traditionally characterized by procedurally generated content that contain randomized items, enemies, and entire levels. And The Binding of Isaac emerged from a week-long game jam, an event bringing developers together to work on new projects. Whilst events like these encourage a variety of development, it's now become a point of focus for one specific gathering in particular, Proc Jam. Organised by Mike Cook, Proc Jam is an annual event with the aim of showing off projects that push the boundaries. And although this system provides infinite possibilities in development, Mike reveals that's not the only quality it can provide players.
Even so, I don't think quantity is the most important reason why we put procedural generation in games. I actually think surprise and uniqueness are much, much more important. The idea that when I sit down and play this game, I might see something that I've never seen before, my friends have never seen before, maybe no one's ever seen before.
Making a game like this, though, is no small task. Even for the biggest of developers, the tools to create generation systems aren't as readily available. But ProcJam are working hard to get the right tools into the hands of developers, big and small.
So there are lots of artists, musicians, programmers who make their own generative systems but don't necessarily work in games. And I really wanted those groups of people to meet up with game designers and see if they could collaborate or inspire each other, which is absolutely what's happened.
Procedural generation has opened the doors for more avenues of game design. By reducing the development costs, the genre has become more accessible, allowing huge publishers and small studios alike to build bigger and more interesting games. And for now at least, it seems the possibilities are endless.